Thank you for joining me. My name is Michael Vasquez, and you're listening to No Soundbites Allowed. And today we are going to be listening to the second part of our special episode, which is with John Cordisco, the former president of the Binghamton City Council. And it's been very exciting so far. The first 45 minutes have been covering just about everything you could possibly think of, from the local to the federal and international level. And we continue that in this second segment. And we thank you for listening. And we hope that you're as excited and interested in the following part as you were in part one. So without further ado, we go back to our conversation with John Cordisco at where we left off. Thank you. I think so. And look at the pregnancy rates we've seen and just the long-term single families. Look at we're talking about benefits, the growth in benefits. Do you know that they're right now, as of today, over the last 7 years, the number of people who are receiving some form of government aid has increased by over 29 million people. And there are actually 161 million people getting some form of government aid. There's only 151 million people working.
Well, they're counting, too, the guy gets $40 a month in food stamps for his kids. So,
well, yeah, they are.
Yeah, but the long and the short of it is, if it does more harm than good, then we have to re-examine it. Now, everybody says, well, John, if we cut everybody off tomorrow, it would be total chaos. That's true. That's true. That's true, but there's got to be a way to do it. I mean,
you can phase it out.
No, what they're saying is today is that the system is so much more unfair. Unfair to minorities, unfair to this, unfair to that. It's the people that run the system that are keeping these people down. Well, let's look at some statistics. In 1960, now you're a person of color, I'm white. In 1960, do you believe that racism was more or less than it is today in the United States?
I'm 48 years old.
Yeah, anybody will tell you, of course, it's way
so
more.
Better. So much better now.
But back then, my understanding from research that I've done, the single motherhood rate in the African American community was close to 20%.
Yeah, it's skyrocketed since
now it's 70, 72, 69. We'll say 70 to round it. So you're telling me that the United States, as a culture, is 3.5 more times prejudiced than it was in 1960? I don't buy the argument.
No, you can't, because it's not true.
It's not true. And the same for non-African Americans. We'll say Caucasians or white, whatever term you want to use. It was 5% in 1960. Now I believe it's just 42%.
Which is still an incredible, ridiculous
So
escalation.
How can society be to blame for all this chaos? It's the patriarchy, whatever they call on the college campuses, that are keeping these people down. Well, I'll tell you what. You can talk to anybody that's older that's African American. We'll say they're even in their 70s. And you want to sit down with them, and they'll tell you stories.
They don't have to be that old. I'm 48. Yeah. I have stories.
But I mean, way
from
before
the 70s.
Even before World War II.
It was crazier before that.
It is much better now for women. It is much better for minorities than it's ever been ever. It will never be perfect. There'll always be that one jerk that doesn't like this and doesn't like that.
Given. Happens.
And that's just a small percent. Nobody even cares.
Right.
I mean, the David Duke guys from the Klan years ago, there's such marginalized percent that they're a joke.
Thank God.
But that's what they're saying. That's why all these people are receiving all these government benefits, because the system is keeping them down. It's nonsense.
Well, if that were true, I wouldn't be on this podcast with you. I wouldn't be a member of the Republican committee. I wouldn't have run for Congress. I mean, really.
I'm not going to go in a lot of...
Because I couldn't have done that in the 60s.
I'm not going to go in a lot of detail in my personal life, but for many years ago, I had a serious drinking problem. Very serious drinking problem.
I didn't know that.
For almost 20 years. And in fact, it crashed my marriage. I have 2 kids. They're good kids. And they work out.
By the way, happy Father's Day.
You as well? And I was homeless twice.
I've been there.
Now, here we are, 10 years after that. I own my own business. I was sitting on city council as the council president. So I don't want to hear that's because you screwed up and made some really bad mistakes that you can't make up for that. Its system is keeping you down. I really don't want to hear it.
No. I've been homeless twice myself. And this is all public information. People know this. I've said it before. I've been homeless twice in my life. I grew up poor. I grew up in the 70s when there was more institutional raisins and there was more of a argument to be said about things being held back, and the change in civil rights was just brand new.
And now
you don't have any of those problems.
Affirmative action and all those things
were brand new then, and now
it's funny. Your SAT scores can be so much lower if you're an African American female to really get into some of these counties where these poor we'll say white people and Asians with really high SATs get thrown off the list to make room.
Yeah.
The other thing that would be fair, this would be really fair. Say we're a big college out in California somewhere.
Right.
30+ thousand students on campus. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And we're going to let in, say, 2,000 or 3,000 people through affirmative action. The only thing would be fair, take those 2,000 students that are getting in with affirmative action and take the 2,000 students that are getting chucked and put them in the room. The students that are getting in through affirmative action on the stage, the ones that are getting chucked out sit in the audience. Then each person that's getting in over somebody else, point to them and say, "You're out because I took your spot." I think that would be a lot more fair. You had 150, 200 points higher in their SATs, but too bad, because affirmative action allows me to take your spot. So you, as Donald Trump says in a show, you're fired. Get out.
Well, that would make
what do you think would happen?
Well, that would make it really personal.
What do you think would happen in that auditorium?
Oh, there'd be riots.
But that's
Riots.
exactly what happens. Because like taxes, there's no
But
face.
it's not personal.
There's
Yeah.
no face on these programs. Like taxes, there's no face who pays.
Right.
Like affirmative action, there's no face on the person that gets screwed over in essence. Because they did absolutely nothing wrong but the right thing.
True.
I think
True.
they would make it a lot fairer. It'd be a lot more fun to watch because I think affirmative action would probably, at least in the colleges, would go way down because if you had to do that.
Just do it once. That would be it.
Yeah.
It would be insane.
But that's exactly what happens. But the bureaucracy gets to pick, that person gets chucked.
Yeah.
Like in all fairness, I should say, listen, I'm taking your spot. Too bad you don't like it.
But I earned it.
Because we have this mindset that we've been in an afflictive race for so long that this is making up for it. It's absolute lunacy.
It does. I don't like that argument. I've never liked it.
And that's what the argument they use for
Well,
it.
my biggest problem with ERA, affirmative action, it's real simple. My view on it. By accepting that, you have to implicitly understand and accept that you're inferior. Because they are defining you.
Yeah.
You're a woman.
How patronizing,
I have to help you.
How patronizing is that?
It is absolutely, because people don't think about it. It's like, wait a minute, you're saying that I am, as a black Hispanic, I am so incapable of being able to compete on any playing field
poor thing,
that we must lower the bar
Yeah.
and push out actually qualified people because I will never reach that level. Excuse me, screw yourself.
Yeah, because
I can do
because
it.
in this part of New York State, there's 17% African Americans, so we have to make sure that everybody goes to SUNY Binghamton. 17. That's just absolute lunacy.
No, you earn it, and this goes back to what we were talking about: winners and losers. You win, you lose, you learn. If I lost, let me try harder. Maybe I'll be able to
But
succeed.
these people are losing because through no unfairness of their own, and that's
Well, yeah.
the argument that's why there's affirmative action. These people are really tried really hard too. I don't buy the argument.
No, it doesn't. It's not true.
Like a funny caveat my father mentioned years ago. He says, "You're a white convenience store owner." He says, "You have to be a minority." So here's what you do. You apply for one of those low interest loans for minority.
Right.
And because you're a white convenience store owner. So if you don't get it, get the ACLU to sue them. And he laughed, but he was trying to make a point because it is funny.
No, it's a good point. I get it.
We laugh because it's so ridiculous.
It is.
But it's ridiculous the other way too.
In both sides. And
It's laughable.
You have to.
Because I'm a certain race, or I'm a certain sex, or I'm a certain age, or that I get to get things that you don't get. Like a white convenience store owner getting low interest loans as a minority is laughable. Well, the other is laughable as well.
Especially in this day and age where we've made so many changes socially in the mindset.
It'll never be perfect.
It'll never be perfect.
Because we're dealing with human beings.
I accept that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say perfect. It says pursuit of happiness, not guaranteed.
And we go back to what originally talked about, was why everybody in the world is trying to get here, because they see this as a lot better.
Yeah.
It's
a great
not
system.
perfect, but it's damn near from where they came from. There was I forget the guy's name. He's Indian. He gives a lot of talks on the internet, lectures. And he has a friend of his in India that's been trying to get over here. Yeah, the guy that went to jail for the $10,000.
Dinesh Souza, yeah.
And he talks to his friend about, I want to get to the U.S. I want to get to the U.S. I mean, that's where everything is, and that's where everything... And he finally says to his friend one day, he was talking to him on the phone, and he goes, "Why do you want to come here so much?" He says, "Because your poor people are fat." Now, everywhere in the world, being fat is a sign of prosperity.
Mm-hmm. And health. Mm-hmm.
And people that are down and out. So, I mean, just think about that statement for a moment.
Well,
how good we really have it here, and the people that are screaming the most how unfair it is. I mean, take a check on yourself, because you're not going to have any clue what it's really like anywhere else.
just think of the image of the Ethiopians starving that we had on for years and years. You never saw one that was fat. It says something.
Yeah, and prosperity, even in India. And India's come a long ways. The biggest democracy in the world has come a long ways, and people still see this as the land of milk and honey. They still see it as this. And that's the funny part.
Because we are.
We'll pick Asian Indians, and we'll pick Asians, i.e. Korea, Thailand, Laos.
Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asians, we'll say Asian Indians, have done extremely well in this country as a group.
Yes.
Way above the average we consider for us. I mean, as far as success goes. They're non-white. Asian Indians, you couldn't tell the difference walking down the street from an African-American in a lot of cases. But why are they doing so much better?
Well, there's that old joke of, 7-Eleven's always owned by an Indian, but...
They're willing to do the work. They're willing to put the time in. They're willing to borrow the money. They're willing to... As like years ago, my father is 100% Italian. It used to be in the old days. And a lot of people that were Jewish in New York did it in the old days. They loaned each other money. They started businesses. But they're willing to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Old Harlem, before we got into the 60s,
Old Harlem
70s,
was booming.
massively booming.
I mean, just not just money-wise, but culturally as well.
Yeah. Because...
And they didn't get a dime of government money.
No. But it was focused. Everyone worked in the community together to get something
because
better.
everybody did was in their own best interest, which was in the interest of the community.
Yeah. Everyone worked together because it's going to be better. If you open up a shoe store, I can get my shoes fixed. It's good for the community. It's good for you. I need a grocery store. I'm going to build the grocery store because I need food, and you're going to run it. Okay, it's good for the community.
And I can make
mindset.
And I can make money too.
Yeah,
and I can take care of my family, and I can do all the things that I came. They see this country as an opportunity, whereas a lot of minorities that are third, fourth, fifth generation or longer don't see this country as a land of opportunity anymore, and it's really, really sad.
Because we're changing the mindset, and I think part of it, and it's like everything we've been saying, it all builds into what we're seeing today. All these different things. We're taking away the challenge and the reward for that challenge. We're making it too easy to subsist on the government.
It's like we all went to school. We all tried out for sports, and say you're a senior in high school, and they're having tryouts for football.
Right.
And we'll say a large percent aren't going to make it.
Right.
Make the team. Make the first team, the varsity, whatever. So what if all the people that got together in that high school that didn't make the team went to the principal and the school board and said, since we didn't make it, nobody can.
Yeah.
And that's in essence what they're doing.
Yeah. No winners, no losers.
Yeah. Since we can't get in now, if I got in, that'd be okay. But since I didn't get in, then nobody else can have it. Since I didn't make, I'm not one of the Waltons, I'm not this, I'm not Bill Gates, I'm not that. I mean, the average millionaire, you would never even know they were millionaires. The real millionaire. They always picked out the Bill Gates and the Waltons and all that. The real millionaires are people who live down the street. You would never even know them because they invested their money or they worked hard. Mm-hmm. But since they have it and I don't, then they can't have it either. Since I can't make the football team, then nobody can play.
And when you phrase it like that, all of a sudden it becomes so obvious how stupid that idea is.
And if I went to a school board meeting here locally in Broome County, the Binghamton School District, and said, here's the deal. Unless everybody makes the team, there aren't going to be any sports. They would laugh.
Yeah.
Or they would think, John's off his medication today or something. They would think there's something seriously wrong with me. But then they'll turn around, these same leftists will turn around and say, in society, that's okay. But not, because it is the same.
Because there is no difference, and it's just as bad an idea on the small scale as it is.
Because they don't realize that people don't have equal skills.
Of course not.
Ben Shapiro, I watch him a lot. He says, I'm a 5'9" white Jew. He says, so I can turn around and sue the Los Angeles Lakers where I live because I can't play on their team. Because those guys are a lot better than me. It's just that simple. It's just the way it works.
Well, that goes back to...
But since I can't play, you guys can't play either.
Which is... and it goes back to our original thought on, competition. Find out, when you fail, you try and do better. And you also get to learn a lesson. If you're not good enough, do something else you are good enough at.
That's the twisted part. The twisted part is leftists believe, and also it's not liberals, leftists believe that it's a very competitive country. Socially, financially.
Absolutely.
And if you try really, really hard and give it 120% and don't make it, that means the system sucks.
No, it just means
No, that's what they believe.
Yeah,
So let's just change the entire system. I remember Barack Obama when he got sworn in. I remember the first time when they had the big crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And remember what he said. And now I'll tell you, it rings really true. We're going to fundamentally
transform America. Oh yeah, I hated that when I heard it the first time.
And I knew exactly what he meant. Now, he got voted in legitimately. There was no chicanery. I don't think he cheated.
He won.
People voted him in. This is a republic, not a democracy.
Yeah.
We voted him in, and that's fine. He's the sitting president. But when I heard that, I went to myself, and that's why I go back to the football team. Since I can't make the football team, nobody can. Since not everybody can do very well in this system, then nobody can have anything.
Bring the system down instead of
bring
raise
everybody
people
else
up.
down. Yeah. And that's exactly, it's really the same thing.
Yeah, it is. And that's sad. That's sad. We're bringing down the nation rather than bringing up people who want to be up. Thank you for joining me. This is Michael Vasquez at No Sound Bites Allowed, and we are listening to our special episode where we're speaking with John Cordisco, who is the former president of the Binghamton City Council. This is a special episode just with John, and we hope that you're enjoying it. We'll be right back in a moment with the continuation of this special episode. Thank you.
And I'll tell you, every country of any size, these little small countries that maybe are socialist or dictatorship or whatever, I don't count them. You need a decent-sized country, i.e.
We're not talking Venezuela, we're talking more like
that's
Germany.
That's pretty good size. But we'll say Russia, the old former Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And talk about different cultures. I mean,
140 different peoples.
They had the spectrum that we have, and it failed.
Yeah.
Miserably.
Absolutely. Abjectly miserably.
It didn't almost make it. And I kill about a lot of these leftists, especially the younger people in colleges, go, well, socialism is a really good idea that just didn't work. No, it's a crappy idea that failed miserably.
Everywhere. It's failed everywhere.
Everywhere.
And the Russians were trying it for 75 years, and it never worked.
Even the Chinese and the Vietnamese
are giving it up. Because
they're the hybrid, but eventually they'll get democracy and get a republic too, because that's what capitalism does.
Yeah,
it's the best system. It's not fault-proof. It's not. There's going to be some losers.
Life isn't fault-proof. There's always going to be the risk of failure. But that's why I think our country's so great and recognized as being so great around the world. You have the right to fail, and you have the right to try again, and you have the right to succeed.
I saw a person, they show this all the time on TV, the really good immigrants, the naturalized citizens, when they get sworn in.
Yeah.
Those are the people I really admire. Giving up your country, your culture, your family, and travel halfway across the world in a country that you can barely speak the language takes a lot of guts.
Yeah.
And to go through the process and get work, and then you finally get sworn in, and this one girl was crying, and she says, when she was being interviewed, and she said, you don't realize, I think she was Indian, Asian Indian. She goes, you don't realize what America's about. None of you do that are from here. And they said, well, what was it about to you? It's about starting over. You don't get to do that where I'm from.
True.
But you get to do that here. You do something and you fail, you turn around. I mean, how many really successful business people have failed in like 8 businesses prior to that?
I don't know I can't name a single person. They've all failed at least once. Actually, at least 3 times, as far as I can recall.
Because America is about starting over. You get to push the start over switch.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere on earth you can do that. Maybe Canada's close and a couple other countries, but
close, but not to this extent.
It's not the same, and it's a shame that Americans, 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation. Now, my grandparents, my father's parents, came from Italy, off the boat, as they used to call it in the old days.
I remember it.
And I remember every time I saw her, she lived at Henry Street downtown by the ballpark.
Okay.
Sitting on the porch with all their cronies, when she got older. And I walk up to her, Grandma, how are you? And you know what's the first thing she said?
What?
Every time I saw her. Did you work it today? Because if you had a job, whether it was shoveling horse manure or sweeping a sidewalk, if you worked, you weren't a bum.
I remember, and my father, one of my first jobs, I worked in the garment industry. And I would go with my uncle in the summers, and I started off there. The first day, I was sweeping the floor. It's garment industry, people don't know. They cut material, and they have a lot of cloth and such on the floors as they're cutting material. And I would sweep the floor Good summer job. I was about 14. It was nothing. And they were paying me a couple dollars just for the effort because I had something to do. Okay. And I was a little upset because I said to myself, well, gee, my friends, they're out, they're having a party, they're going to play in the arcade, they're playing handball, they're running around, they're enjoying the summer, and here I am sweeping the floor. And I was telling my dad about it. Do you get paid? Yeah. And did you work for it? Yeah. Hold your head high. Yeah. You can hold your head high any day of the week.
Look at old pictures. Any community that whoever's listening to this, you can pick any community, not just this one. Mm-hmm. Look at old pictures of working class people, say 1910, 1920.
Yeah.
All the women are nicely dressed. I'm not talking about real
suits.
Victorian stuff where you can't show anything up. They're all and they got their head held high and their chest out. All the guys have hats on,
suits
and a sport
ties.
coat. I don't care if it had holes in the elbows. You had a sport coat on and a shirt.
Yeah,
you gave a damn what you looked like. You gave a damn about yourself.
Absolutely.
And whether you were dirt poor, my father was. He says, what's funny? I look back at it now. We were poor, but I never felt poor.
No.
I never.
Poor is a mindset. Poor is a mindset.
And that's the problem I had with citizen action and a lot of the people, especially in New York. Anybody's listening to New York State knows what citizen action is. Or I should say citizen in action.
Yeah.
But they just don't comprehend that kind of thing. They just don't understand it. I remember one time, what started really I was leaning towards leaving the Democratic Party for a long time. But there was enough old school Democrats like the Harry Truman, Kennedy Democrats where I stuck with it. If you walk in the city clerk's office in Binghamton, there's this giant mural on the wall.
Right.
Of right downtown, right by the courthouse, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
That's facing towards the old McLean's building. And you can see people milling around in some, cars and horses. And I said at a council meeting once, being this is the home of Rod Serling, it'd be really cool that if the people in that mural just walked out, in person. Because that'd be a good Twilight Zone episode because Rod Serling's from here.
Yeah.
And the first thing they would say as I took them around downtown, they would go, John, what the hell happened? And I said that at a council meeting once. And I had to try to explain to them what happened. That they built up this place from nothing, and it was one of the biggest commercial centers in upstate New York, if not the state of New York or the region.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to explain to them what happened. Well, Citizen Action, all the liberals group went crazy. I'm this right-wing extremist. I'm this, I'm that. And these are the people that are really running this state.
Yeah, sadly.
And I don't want to go back. Women didn't vote. Blacks were treated very badly. I don't want to go back to that time socially.
I don't think
I want to go back to that time mentally as an individual effort does matter.
Yeah. I want to go back to, I think the 50s had a great work ethic. I think there was a good community ethic. I think that there are positives in that time frame for the nation. Even with the segregation that existed, there were a lot of positives in that time frame that we have completely given up on. And look at our communities now.
You go to Harlem in the 1920s, and if we go back in time and you had your little your podcast thing here and sat somebody down and said, there's a ton of racism against African Americans in the U.S. Guys say, oh, yeah, but you know what? I don't care. I'm doing fine. They're jerks. I'm doing my own thing. The hell with them.
Yeah.
I've got my family. I've got my friends. I've got my business. I've got the things that I do. If they want to act like that, that's their problem.
People could prosper. People could do well.
But not today.
No.
Ask somebody in Harlem today. Wow, it's because of this. Why we're put down. And it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
It is. I mean, look at Binghamton now versus even 60 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. You're looking at, we've got 30% poverty, 40+% for kids. We have a dearth of jobs, and they're getting fewer and fewer as more places are leaving New York State. The policies aren't working.
So we need to try something else.
That would seem to be the logical answer.
And their take is, well, we can't think of anything else. Well, you can't think of anything else because you see everyone that's low income as a victim. And that's the mindset of all leftists, that everybody's a victim. It's like the one thing I can't figure out, I'll tell you the victim mentality is the, LGBT community?
Yeah.
Are nationally, in a lot of things, siding with a lot of Islamic individuals overseas. I'm thinking to myself, you got to be kidding.
No, they're not. Not. Wait a minute. ISIS kills them, throws them off of buildings.
But they still side with them because they have the victim mentality. Anybody that's seems the impression they've been victimized hasn't been victimized by some system or organization, so we're going to side with them.
Well, that goes back to my...
It's insane.
It goes right to the thought that I had, as I mentioned. By accepting the fact that you're a victim, whether that's because you're black, Hispanic...
It's already over for you.
If you accept the fact that you're a victim, then all this...
We'll go back to my grandmother,
insane.
who came off the boat Italian. And, did you work it today? And
Yeah.
she used to have another expression. I think this dovetails very nicely with, you don't work it, you don't eat it.
Yeah.
And so here's a person that came over, very limited English skills, found a job rolling cigars, because we were a cigar rolling center back then,
Right.
in the world. You find work. You struggle for a while. It sucks.
Yes.
Okay, I'm telling you, being poor sucks.
Being homeless sucked. I remember
being
it.
homeless sucks
Yeah.
too. But the fact of the matter is, it's not permanent.
You build yourself up.
And you know that you're not there because some system screwed you over.
No, I made a bad choice.
I made a lot of bad choices too. Made some good ones too, but
given.
But what I'm trying to say is that we saw it differently. And they say, well, how do you change the system from the welfare system, a lot of things we're talking about today? How difficult it is to convince someone that what they believe in their whole lives is a lie. How hard is that?
Well, and that's the key, because I believe I'm still in the generation with a mindset similar to yours, where we're not that much different in age.
I was born in 56.
Right, now it's 68. So not that much different, that you work, you earn, you have pride in that, and you grow from there as best you can. And when you change that, so we trying to tell kids today that have no concept of that whatsoever.
Who are convinced that the whole system stinks and is keeping them down. How do you tell someone,
I don't know.
and even someone in their 30s and 40s and even older today, how do you convince them that what they've believed in, that they believe the earth's been flat their whole life, how do you convince them that that's a lie and it's not true? It's really, until we do that, changing things around is going to be impossible.
Very, very possibly. Very possibly. Let me we're way over on time. I'm going to split this into two parts.
Okay. I tend to babble on, so.
No, I think it's been a fantastic conversation. But I would be remiss to my listeners, because it's been so popular, because it's been so much in the news, because you have such a wealth of information and insight. I want to bring up something, and if you don't want to talk about it, tell me. We don't have to.
Oh, I said at the beginning, any topic is fair game.
Okay.
And if I tell you that I don't know enough about the topic to discuss it or whatever, I'm one of those very few people, even when I was a local elected official. If I don't know the answer, I just say I don't know and I can find out. Instead of lying, I can say I don't know.
I think that's perfectly respectable.
If I knew everything, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, everyone can't have an answer for everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to find out and then make an opinion based on what you learn. I think that's perfectly reasonable, especially for elected officials. But the subject is gun control. Everyone's talking about
Or lack of gun control.
Lack of gun control, gun bans, in the mass shootings. And let me start that. And I want to hear your thoughts. But here's where I stand. I've recently, and I just had some articles I put out in a podcast as well. If there is no difference between an AR-15 than a Mini Ruger 14. For my gun owners, you know what that is.
I don't know distinctions.
I'm going to explain it.
Yeah.
They're both of them. Okay, AR-15, you've seen them in the movies. Almost everyone in the military has them. Okay. A Mini Ruger is basically a hunting rifle. Think of any movie with a hunting rifle, that's kind of it. They fire the same ammunition. They carry the same magazine. They have the same rate of fire. They're the same gun.
That's where my distinction is the size of the magazine at one time.
They're both the same.
The large numbers that are in a magazine. Bill O'Reilly had a point, and I saw the other day that I agree with 100%.
Okay.
Well, I'll just say this too. You know, heroin's banned, by the way. Do you know that?
Of course.
We can go around the corner or 3 or 4 blocks this way and
get it.
Instantly. So banning it obviously didn't do much good. It just made it more expensive.
Yeah.
And the quality really sucks too, so you could die.
Yeah.
We'll go back to that with guns. I mean, in all fairness, there's going to have something to be done, but it depends how you look at the Second Amendment.
Well, I can tell you how.
Well, it depends how you look at it. There's 2 schools of thought. Because I read.
I think there's one.
There's 2 schools of thought with the Founding Fathers. There's actually 2. Adams and all those guys that put it together. There's 2 schools of thought. One is a gun for personal protection.
Right.
And then guns Now, you have to take the mindset of the Founding Fathers. Second Amendment for having guns to fight against tyranny from government.
Yes.
Now, I do have to say, they couldn't probably have foresaw a lot of things that are going on now.
To an extent.
So it depends what side of the Second Amendment you're on. You're on for personal protection, or you say that government eventually, I mean, look at Germany in the 1930s, how it went. Governments that are democracies, that are modern democracies, can go bad very quickly.
Very, very quickly.
Those are the two schools of thought in the Second Amendment, as far as I'm concerned, and the reading that I've done with the Founding Fathers.
Well, I think the Founding Fathers came off of...
They're not the same. They're not interchangeable.
I don't know
the guy that has a couple of guns, that has a family that wants to protect them, stores them away properly and all that.
I think they're codependent because one gives you the other. If I'm protecting myself, and let's put it into real world terms. Thank you for joining me. This is Michael Vasquez at No Sound Bites Allowed, and we are listening to our special episode where we're speaking with John Cordisco, who is the former president of the Binghamton City Council. This is a special episode just with John, and we hope that you're enjoying it. We'll be right back in a moment with the continuation of this special episode. Thank you. The government, as any government can, goes bad. And they start trying to corral the gays. Or...
No, something evil. Something evil
like that. Where it's apparent.
Or all the former Democrats we have to get together and shoot. You know?
Yeah. So we have this very apparent, my home protection, my protection of my person and my property is tantamount and it is intrinsically the protection from the tyranny of government. Right, but they're not different.
But what I was going to say right after that is this. Every single weapon ever invented that still exists today is not open game for the Second Amendment.
No. Well,
you can't have a grenade. You can't have a flamethrower. There is restriction.
Well, we have that. We've clearly, the gun ban, the automatic weapons have been banned since 1986, although... If you apply for a specific license, you can get a tank, a bazooka, a fire, flamethrower, or an automatic.
My personal opinion, I don't have a strong opinion on gun control. I see it as taking away some people's freedoms. I can understand that perspective. Mm-hmm. But two things. If I was the president right now,
right,
I would say this. First of all, I would make it not an honest effort, not what's going on now where one side's blaming the other and nothing gets done.
It's all about blame.
I would sit down and say, listen, guys, I don't agree with everything you say, part of it, and you don't agree with everything I say.
Right.
We're going to have to come to a compromise. Maybe bring down the magazine amounts a little bit.
If that's the compromise, then I can live with that.
And this is Bill O'Reilly's idea, which I agree with 100%. Don't do what a lot of laws do, where they screw over the law-abiding, decent people.
Yeah.
We'll use Chicago as an example, because that's the killing field.
Oh, massively.
They have some of the strictest gun control laws anywhere in the country, if not the strictest. Absolutely. So obviously it's not working.
No.
So he had an idea, and I agree with it. I'm not going to take the idea. I'm going to say Bill O'Reilly actually had it. Mm-hmm. Take state and federal illegal guns laws off the books. Make it federal only. You have an illegal handgun, you're going to jail for 10 years. Federal minimum mandatories. None of this goofing around anymore, where the guys that can get guns that are in gangs and illegal activity can get all they want, with basically no repercussions except for the act they're going to do with them. Yeah. Having an illegal gun isn't that big of a deal in a lot of cities and states.
True.
Oh, you might get 6 months probation or maybe spend 30 days in county jail or whatever. Make it so that if you're a bad guy and you have an illegal gun, there's going to be huge consequences just for having it. If you don't do that...
That makes sense. I can see that.
Because what the law-abiding people are saying, listen, you're taking away some of my guns, you're taking away some of my freedom, but these clowns are all over the place with these guns and nothing happens. You have to be both at the same time.
Well, there's another component to that I think is important. Enforcement. We have to enforce the laws that are there.
You sound like me when I was a councilman.
But it's such basic government. Laws only work in a society. I don't care what laws, what society, I don't care what government you have. Laws only function as much and to the extent that you enforce those laws. Once you lose those laws...
And it's how you enforce them as well. When I was a councilman, there's code violations and stuff. You can really be a jerk and really grind people, which is not really what the law is meant for.
No.
But if you do those two things, if you sit down and try to make a compromise, we'll say with the NRA, if Obama said, listen, I want to sit down with some of my people and some of your people, we're going to put you all in a room. This is like the Constitution was put together. Mm-hmm. This is going to be open for public consumption. Neither was the putting together the Constitution.
No. That was after the fact.
There was a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because they would nitpick the crap out of everything.
Of course.
And nothing would get done. Sit down with some, NRA is a good start.
Yeah.
And so Obama people and said, listen, we're going to have to come to some compromises. Stop with the finger pointing. We're going to lock the doors in the room. There's going to be no microphones. There's going to be no TV cameras. And we're going to try to figure out something. Now, I used to say when I was a councilman that we used to debate things and change some laws. If both sides of the argument are upset, that's a good compromise.
Yeah, almost always.
And that's what I think. Bring down the magazine size a little bit, but make it very, very, very tough and jail time associated with it to have an illegal gun, period. It's not that bad right now, considering the detriment to society for having these illegal guns out there. Getting 5 years in jail just for having an illegal gun, will it do anything? But at least it'll be fair.
Well, it's a compromise. And at least that's a start.
That's my opinion currently on gun control.
It's an idea, and that's a valid idea to at least start the conversation with. It's at the very least a starting.
We can go on a lot of details about people who have mental problems applying for licenses and all that stuff. I don't consider licenses in a 3-day waiting period any infringement. I really don't.
No.
If you got to have a really high magazine gun in the next couple hours, usually it's probably a good idea that you probably shouldn't have it because you're a little PO'd.
Yeah,
something triggered you off or whatever, and you just...
And I can make that concession. But I don't want to be denied simply because cosmetically you don't like the way my gun looks.
Yeah, no, I understand.
That's a different. That's an entirely different category.
So, like I said, if I was president, I would sit down and say, let's cut down some of the magazine sizes and let's really, really be tough on illegal guns and the people that have them. I think that would be a good start.
Oh yeah, I think that...
And then we'll put that in place and let 3 or 4 years go by. And that's the problem with these laws, is they're made on paper. Well, they don't fit in the real world. Now, let's see how much good that does.
Yeah. And adjust accordingly.
And what's going to happen is the leftists are going to scream and holler that most of the people that have illegal guns are minorities. That's what they're going to say. You know what's going to happen.
Okay, so they're minorities.
Because
still
they can't...
illegal.
Well, it'd be tough for them to admit that. Then they turn around and say, well, they have illegal guns because of the system sucks. And I mean, they always go back to the same thing. But let's try that and see. I don't think the guy that lives out, in fact, my son lives in Montana, so I'll pick Montana. The rancher in Montana that has huge magazines and tons of weapons, that's a different gig than the average guy that wants a weapon. Yeah. The average person that wants a gun for protection, have 2 or 3 in the house. And we're a gun culture. We always will be.
Yeah. It's part and parcel of the nation. Part and parcel.
And I don't think we're going to get 10, 15,000 armed people that build an army to invade Washington because they think their laws suck. I mean, that's not going to happen either.
I don't see that happening, no.
So we have to be realistic that the way things are set up right now is not working.
Guaranteed. I don't think anyone would argue that.
So let's do things like cut the magazine size, make it a federal crime. Really, I'm not talking about 60 days in county jail for having an illegal gun. I mean, you say you're a police officer in Chicago, and shots fired, and you go there and you roust a few people, and 2 of them have illegal guns. Now, what charge are they going to get today? You can't prove it was them that fired them off.
Well, there you go. There's your first problem right there. The law's going to say
you have an illegal gun. You have to go before a judge. Now, if you're on probation or parole, you're probably screwed. But there really is no major penalty.
Confiscation of the gun.
Confiscation. He might do 6 months. He might do 6 months, and you'll do 3 months of that because the prisons are overcrowded. I would rather spend my federal tax dollars putting in prisons and expanding prisons for illegal gun activity over a guy that's selling weed all day.
Different argument.
No, what I'm trying to say is that we need to prioritize
the issue. Mm-hmm.
Our law enforcement priorities.
Right. Well, we haven't looked at that in a long time. The nation has not looked at the priorities. Literally.
I mean, the guy that's selling the little bag of $10 weed around the corner is not the same guy that's the gangbanger that's shooting. Not usually.
Sometimes.
Not usually. It's the hard drugs. It's the hard drugs that are really where the money is and where the problem is.
That's one of the biggest areas, but there are some other, but I understand the thought. I do understand the thought.
Yeah, it's not going to be perfect.
No.
But let's try that. But the problem is nobody will sit down and be an honest broker. Because they have their agendas and they really don't care about yours. On both sides of the aisle.
That's true.
And I think cutting back on magazine size and really making federal laws that are really tough on illegal guns, if we just did that alone, don't have this big slew 1,800 page document law. Just those two things and the things that are attached to it. Put it in place. We'll wait 3 or 4 years and see what happens.
Well, you know what? Hopefully, we can always hope that this becomes popular.
That's pretty much my take on gun control.
Well, no, I like it, but hopefully, people will hear this. Maybe they write it into their local politician. Maybe these politicians actually, for once, listen to the public. They give it a shot, and maybe it works. I'm hoping for a lot.
We have to make the elected officials in their best interest, and frankly, that's not happening right now.
If they don't do that, then we elect them out.
Can you imagine if you're an assembly person or a state senator in New York, and you come up with that, depending on what party you are, will determine how far it gets.
True. And in New York, if you're not a Democrat, it ain't going anywhere. But
people used to ask me all the time when I was a councilman, John, we didn't look it up what party you belong to. I said, I'm good. I'm glad that you don't know. Based on what I say and what I think. It's good that you can't figure out which one.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter at the end of the day.
But it does, unfortunately. And when you get to these, now you're not so much local city council races, but when you get the county exec and higher, state assembly, state senate,
Congress,
it matters a great deal. Well, I digress, but it's all part and parcel of the same problem, is that we're not really interested in solving problems. We're too busy pointing fingers at the other side. On both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, we are. And I agree. I think anyone who's objectively and realistically looking at the situation, you have to say that. You have to, because it's true.
I will say this, though. I know it's funny. I listen to read a lot of history books and history professor lectures. We talk about gun control and racism and minorities and all the topics we discussed today.
Right.
They all ask us, especially the historians that are in American history, professors of American history, if the founding fathers were around today, what do you think they'd say? And almost every single one of them says the same thing. They would be amazed that we lasted this long.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think any of them would have imagined.
So as much, I mean, we're running a little long on time, but
yeah.
I wanted to say this before the end. For those of you out there that think the system really sucks, the system is against you, and this whole corrupt country and everything else that comes with it. This is the building on the hill. This is the shining whatever Reagan used to say. That is really true. A lot of things I don't agree with, but he's right. This is the best place that's ever existed ever.
Yeah.
And for you to stand there as an American citizen 4, 5, 6 generations later and try to tear down this imperfect but best system in the world, there's something wrong with you, and you need to sit down and really check yourself. That it's not perfect, but if you can think of something better, I'm all ears. It doesn't exist.
I haven't seen anyone come up with it yet in the world, and they've been talking about it for 200 years.
And we're dealing with people. People aren't perfect.
Yeah.
And that's the part that the leftists don't get. They think that if we set up a system that everybody is like, we'll all sit around and hug each other and share everything. and human beings, that's the part of the left that the left thinks that human beings are ultimately, in their hearts, 110% good and decent.
And that's just not true.
And I can't speak for you, but a lot of people on the other side of the aisle think, yeah, there's a lot of good with people, but we're not perfect. And if we didn't, we wouldn't need government if people weren't imperfect.
We wouldn't need laws if people weren't flawed.
And that's what I wanted to leave, at least in part, with this, is that freedom is messy.
Yeah.
It's incredibly messy.
Always.
And the world sees our political system nationally as a joke, but I'll take it over anything that anybody else has thought of up until this point. And so to leave you with that, I think before you start criticizing, before you start name-calling some of these demonstrations for president on both sides, think of the fact that we have way, way, way more in common than we do differences.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point to end this on. We're going to take this and we're going to split it into 2 parts, but I want to end this on. I want to thank you, John, for
Well,
coming in.
thanks for having me. I hope I didn't babble on too much.
No, I don't think so. I think this is it's been very informative. I think it's been a wonderful event. Hell, I want to get you back on and do it again.
I want to leave this, though. I used to say this every year in my city council when election time came up. Mm-hmm. For those of you that don't vote, there's tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of Americans all over the world, including the United States, sitting in cemeteries that give you that right to do that. If you don't vote, even if you sign in your own name, it's incredibly disrespectful for those that have gave their lives for you to do that.
I agree
with that.
I agree with that 100%. I think it's a beautiful message. Well, for the listeners, we thank you for having listened in. Thank you for your support, for checking out No Soundbites Allowed. We hope that you're going to come back and listen to some of our other guests and some of the other programs. Check out the Binghamton Political Buzz at theexaminer.com. I like that. And if you can, please always like and share. Let other people know about this. And donate. Donations always help. $2, $5, $500 if you can. Because this is expensive and your support is what keeps us going. So with that, I again thank John Cordisco of Binghamton for coming in, speaking with us, and I wish everyone to have a very good week. Thank you.